first place championships this weekend. And, That's amazing. I can't wait to see her dance with her. She does it in Kona though.
Come on.
Maybe you guys know that one. Also, one more thing is next weekend we have a special treat for you.
Yay.
Next week Sunday we have a guest speaker.
Oh,
it's Austin.
Come on, Austin.
As you know, it's Beth and I's anniversary, 10-year anniversary. 10 long hard years to train Beth to be so awesome. See how awesome she is now. It took me 10 years to get this one. But we're going to be on Oahu celebrating our anniversary. So we won't be here. Pray for Beth that long weekend. Anyway, into the lesson today is entitled War and Peace. You know, war is big business these days. And I mentioned a few weeks ago, there are over 40 armed conflicts going on around the world right now. 40 different wars. Tons of money and lives are spent waging these battles. It's nothing new though. It's not an American thing or it's not a European thing. It's not something that the white man just recently invented. There's been conflicts on this planet with each other, between peoples, individuals, countries, groups of people, since God put us here. There's been conflicts have been going on since the beginning of time. Now, people today have different opinions on war. There are pacifists who think there's absolutely no excuse for armed conflict in any way, shape, or form. There shouldn't be armies, there shouldn't be any kind of weapons. Just like, no war, period. And that's that. Also, there are conscientious objectors who say, well, there's war, but I think it's wrong for me to fight in war. There's a great movie that I saw, Hacksaw Ridge. This guy who does religious objections. It's like, look, I'll join the army. I'll fight in the war, I'll be a part of the war effort, I'll even go to the front lines, but I'm not picking up a rifle, and I'm not shooting anybody. And they were going to court-martial the guy, but they decided, look, just let him go. If he wants to go out there and get himself killed, then fine. And he went out there and he didn't kill anybody, and he helped his soldiers that were injured, even helping enemy soldiers that were injured. He's a conscientious objector. Really good movie, actually. Then there are on the other side of things, there's the warmongers, right? There's the people like, oh, we need more wars. There's not enough wars, and they want to push the military might around, and they want more people to die, more money to get spent. And I'm not here to talk about any of that today, though. Actually, I'm not for or against war of that type. There's a different kind of war that we as Christians are fighting.
Yeah.
You know, and just like in the physical war, there's a spiritual war.
Yeah.
And in both of these types of wars, there are injuries and there are casualties in different ways. But basically, to have a war, you just need two different groups of people, two individuals or two countries to have opposing views on something. And they're going to scrap about it. And on one side, someone's going to get destroyed, and on one side, someone's going to be victorious. And that's what war, basically the concept of war is. In Ecclesiastes chapter 3, that you don't have to turn to, the Bible says there is a time to be born and there's a time to die. There's a time to love and a time to hate. And there's a time for war, and there is a time for peace. So today we're going to talk about the spiritual war that goes on around us. And as Christians, we don't fight war like the world does. We don't use swords, guns, or bombs to destroy those who oppose us. Make no mistake about it, but we are opposed as Christians by everyone, really. Friends, neighbors, strangers, other religious groups, even the government. They'll freak out if you talk about Jesus in school. Your boss could fire you too. If you share your faith at work, they can do that. They could fire you for skipping work to go to church on Sunday. You can get fired for these things. Also, even in our own families, there can be conflict and war and opposition to being a Christian. And like I said earlier, in our war, there are injuries and there are casualties, just like in any war. And I like to think of our church here, our little church here in Kona, as a special forces team. It's dropped off behind enemy lines. We're just out here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on this big giant island, surrounded by lava and enemies trying to destroy us. And that's what we are like. You know, we have our church in LA, we have our church in Hilo, and they're awesome too, in Honolulu. So we have help, we have support, but it's a long way off. And you know, if we get captured or if we get killed by them, if we get taken out, well, too bad. Right? You know, too bad. You just suck it up, boys and girls. You gotta get hurt. You gotta just get through it. You gotta fight on. You can't give up. You can't surrender. You can't retreat.
Yeah.
And they'll help us out, but it's gonna be some time. You're gonna have to be able to, we have to patch each other up. We have to pick up each other's weapons when we fall. And this is what we have to do in the spiritual battle. So my first point number one, make war, not peace. You know, the battle lines are drawn, starting right in the very middle of our family, in Matthew chapter 10.
Come on, bro. Come on, bro.
Matthew chapter 10, name when you guys get there.
Come on, Dave.
Amen.
Matthew chapter 10, in verse 34. Jesus says, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against his mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household."
Come on.
Jesus is saying here that if you are thinking about following me, about being a Christian, and if you think that you're going to have a peaceful life, well, think again. It's not going to happen. I have come to turn your closest relationships against you. He's not saying here that it's not my intention that people are going to come against you. He says, no, I'm going to turn them against you. I'm going to turn your family against you. You will have war, not peace, if you want to follow me. Now, let's get this straight. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 6 says, Jesus is the Prince of Peace. In John 14:27, Jesus tells his disciples, "Peace I leave with you, and peace, my peace I give to you." And this is true. He's not contradicting himself here. But why would he say this? Why would he say, "I'm coming to bring a sword"? I'm coming to bring a sword. Jesus didn't mean a literal sword. He didn't come packing heat. He's not a member of the NRA. And, it's not a literal sword. It's a spiritual sword that Jesus is talking. It's his teaching. Now, anyone who rejects God's path to salvation through Jesus will find himself or herself in a perpetual state of war against God. There will always be conflict between good and evil. There will always be conflict between light and dark, children of God and children of the devil. These conflicts must happen, even inside of our own physical families, Jesus is saying. If there isn't conflict within your own family, then you have to ask yourself, are you really walking with God? We should absolutely seek to be at peace with all men. Not forgetting, though, that Jesus warned us that we will be hated by all men at the same time. We don't go around looking for trouble. Jesus will make that happen. Now, swords are weapons. They are used for dividing and severing. That's what they are used for. Jesus' teachings are that sword. They draw a line in the sand between good and evil, right and wrong, the lost and the saved. Those who are part of his church and those who are not, they draw a line between heaven and hell. What side of that dividing line do you want to find yourself on today? You know, why does Jesus make these conflicts happen? Well, basically it's to test us, to see if we are worthy of his love. Continue our reading in verse 37. Jesus says, "Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." No, Jesus is saying that if your closest relationships here on earth are more important to you than your relationship with God and with me, then you're not worthy of my love. He's saying that. And he's like, and on top of that, if you don't pick up your cross, the symbol of persecution and death and punishment as a criminal, if you don't take that up and daily follow me, then you are not worthy of my love. That is going to cause conflict. For us to be worthy of Jesus, His love. We have to prove to Him that our love is more important than even our own closest family relationships. Our love for God is more important than that. Jesus left His family and died for us on the cross, and we have no right to love our family more than Him. We must not only be willing to face family hatred, but also death, carrying our cross like a criminal to our own death. We have to be willing to do that, because that is exactly what Jesus did for us and our crimes against humanity. Will you be found worthy of Christ's love when He comes back? Or have you been shrinking back in the face of persecution? A lot of times when it comes to dealing with our family members that aren't disciples, that are not saved, we can shrink back because we don't want to get hassled by them or harassed by them. We say, well, I pray for them every day, and it's up to God. Or we can say, well, it'll happen in God's time. I'll just be patient. Well, I'm here to tell you, right now is God's time.
Yeah.
Right now is God. Today is God's time. I invited them to have a Bible study or come to church once, and they weren't open. Or, even worse, are you tempted to leave God and listen to your family? Now, your family should be saying these things to you. Why do you go to church so much? Your family should be saying that. Why do you give them your money? They should be saying that. Why are you so different now? What's wrong with you? Are you in some kind of cult? Your family should be saying these things. Enjoy your life, live it up. They should be telling you that. If they're not, then they don't know what you're really about. That reminds me of the story of Austin's dad, and I've told it to the church a few times. When I first met Austin a couple years ago, or it was a little over a year ago, I started asking him about his family and if they're open to becoming Christians. And he's like, my family is very religious, and they think they're alright with God, and they're just not open right now. But one person out of my whole family is going to be the hardest one of all to ever become a disciple. I mean, I believe it could happen in God's time, but my dad is just not open. There's no way he could become a Christian right now. My dad is just no way. He's super prideful, so he doesn't want to hear anything about it. I tried talking to him about it, he just shut me down. And I looked across the table at Austin, and I'm like, I need to pray for this guy to have some faith. Because his brother has no faith at all. His faith level is 0 when it comes to his dad, And it's amazing how God worked. Not by anything Austin or I or anybody else did, but Austin's dad got diagnosed with cancer. And he got really, really sick, and the doctors gave him a few months to live. And so, Austin's like, what do I do? I heard why my dad's back home, and they're saying he's going to die in a couple of months. And we're like, you need to go back home to your dad. You need to go back home to make sure that if your dad does die, that he dies safe. Go do that. And so he prayed about it. Austin went back, and his dad got this close to death from his cancer. But he through studying the Bible and repented of his sins and got baptized. He was so weak and frail when he got baptized. He couldn't even get up and get into the baptismal. He had to be carried on a sheet to get baptized and have his sins washed away. Amazingly, his dad recovered from his illness. The cancer is not completely gone, but he's actually up and walking around and doing very well as an active member of our church.
Amen.
It's an amazing victory. In spite of Austin's arrogance, pride, and faithlessness, it's time to say.
Preach it!
And I'm so happy, and we're also joyful that God proved Austin wrong. And hopefully his faith grows for us in this family here. Now he's like, my brother's so prideful. He's not over it at all. Let's hope he doesn't get cancer. Let's hope he repents. But his family is moving in the right direction. We'll continue praying for them. Jesus' example with his own family members, he calls us to love God more than our own family members. And Jesus did the same thing. Jesus' family thought he was a part of some cult. They did. They went to come and take him away when he was with the disciples. They said, he's out of his mind. We need to go and get him out of this church that he's in. And Jesus, this is Jesus, his own mother, who bore him as a virgin. When the angel came and told her about it, she lost her faith and thought Jesus was crazy. And she came to take him away. But Jesus said, no, that's not my mom. Those are not my brothers that are outside trying to get me in. those in this room, those who do the will of my Father, those are my actual mother and brothers and sisters. Those are my family. And Jesus followed God to the cross and died, turning his back on his physical family. But the amazing thing is, it ended very well. A few years later, who was at the cross? His mother was there.
Yeah.
Who were the first disciples listed in Acts chapter 1? His brothers were there.
Yeah.
See, when we have our conviction set on our true family, which is our spiritual family, we have our conviction set on the cross, on Jesus, doing the will of our Father. That's the best hope and chance our family has of being saved and making it to heaven. It's not that we don't love them, but it's that we love God so much more. That's what the key is right here. Jesus walked away from his physical family, took up his cross, allowed evil men to murder him in cold blood so that we could be here today in this church. Jesus did that for us. We have no right to love our family more than that. This is the most important place to be in the Big Island today, right now. My challenge is to go after your family member's salvation with a vengeance. If you can win your family over, you can win anybody over. Start with your family, then go to war on your friends. Then your neighbors and co-workers, then go after the strangers on the streets. Pray, fast, have conversations with them, set an example for them, make war against them. You know, my family, I had to make war against my family. You know, when I first got saved, I was a raging, crazy alcoholic psychopath. And I got saved, I gave all that up. And it was such a radical difference and change that my family saw in me. They couldn't deny that something powerful had happened. It was such a huge difference. And one by one, I baptized my 2 sons, they were teenagers. I baptized my mother. I baptized my 2 sisters, my 2 brothers, and several of my nephews. One by one over a several-year period. And it's not because I'm amazing. It's not because I'm awesome. I'm so filled with faith or something like that. I just shared with them. I shared with each person. I showed an example in my life, and I showed an example in the scriptures of how to get to heaven and how to be saved. And each one by one, they did that. It's amazing. So I'm not going to send you out there and say, just go and do it without giving you some weapons. I'm going to sharpen your sword for you a little bit here. You got to go out with a sword and go after your family, friends, and neighbors. So you're welcome ahead of time. Galatians chapter 5, verse 22.
Come
on, Dave.
You guys need some weapons to go out there and kick out the enemy. And remember, your family's not the enemy. The people, even if they're opposing you, they're not really your enemy. It's the spiritual battle. It's the dark forces behind that spiritual evil in this world. Satan and his demons. And he does work through people, don't get no doubt about it, but people are not the enemy. They're the ones we need to save. Galatians chapter 5.
on, bro. You're awesome. Come on.
Galatians chapter 5, verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. This is amazing. The fruit of the Spirit. Love. It's the most important thing we can have. Yeah. Being loving to people when they're not being loving to us. Joy. Being fired up and joyful even when everybody around you in your family, your neighborhood, or your work is not joyful. Being joyful in your life. Having peace. Having peace in your life. Not having conflict. Not causing conflict. But having a peace with God. Yeah. Patience. That's a big one. Patience. That one struck me. Like, oh, am I living my life this way? I have to ask myself, am I impatient? Am I being patient with people when they're not responding to the scriptures? Am I being patient with my kids when they're tweaking out? Come on, kids. How about kindness? Being kind when people are so unkind in this world around me. Like for me, it's a big deal when I'm walking in the supermarket or something like that, or I'm out surfing and I smile and wave at somebody, and they frown at me and give me stink eye. That for me, like where I grew up, like in Waianae, that means you're gonna fight. That's what that means. That means we're gonna go outside and we're gonna handle this problem right now. Because obviously, you're gonna take me out, so we're gonna go. You know, and so it's hard for me. That's my worldly self back in the day. You know, and so for me to be kind in that situation, it ain't easy. Goodness. So don't ever give me stink eye again, Austin. Being good. Living your life, just being righteous. Doing what's right. Being good. Even like in church, of course we're all going to be good here. No one's going to, no one's going to trip out in church, right? But how about Monday morning?
Come on.
How about Tuesday at work? How about Wednesday when you're kind of far away from Sunday already? You know, and at work people are not being good. You know? How about faithfulness? Being faithful, believing in the promises that God has in the Bible, believing that this can transform people's lives. Being transformed and transforming others. The promises in the Bible are incredibly powerful. And we have to have faith in them and believe them and put it in practice in our life. Gentleness is another big one. Being gentle. Power under control is what gentleness is. And Jesus, of course, is the most perfect example of that. When he was on the cross, he had the power. All the power of the universe to destroy all of humankind. And he exercised gentleness, not destroying when he could have. Or even should have. Not destroying it. Are we practicing gentleness in our lives? I mean, if I wanted to move this podium from here to across the room, I could pick it up and carefully carry it over there and set it down. Also, I'm strong enough to chuck it over there. That's power. But using gentleness, we carefully carry it over there. Are you gentle with people in your lives? Not exercising the power that you could have over someone and crushing them with the scriptures, rather than lifting them up and helping them.
Come on, babe.
Self-control, not giving in to our emotions. When in an emotionally charged situation, not giving in to those emotions, but practicing self-control. Against such things, there is no law. There is no law. No one can condemn you. Not in heaven. Not here on earth. Not in hell. Against this, there is nothing that can defeat you. Viewing the lost world through these eyes, treating your family this way, living your life this way. That's how you go out and save them. Point number 2. I'll go out and do this, okay? Point number 2, make peace, not war. First one was make war, not peace. Now we're going to make peace, not war. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 says there is a time for peace, right? There's always going to be war and conflict in this world, there's no doubt about it. But for there to be peace between two opposing forces, there has to be surrender from one side or the other. Let's turn to Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14.
Come on, bro.
Luke chapter 14, verse 31. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king, will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. You know, Jesus here is talking about two kings. And of course we know that he's talking about himself as the powerful king of 20,000, so with 20,000 soldiers. And we, on the other side, are the weaker king with 10,000 soldiers. God right now is on his way back to come to oppose us and make war against us. He is on his way right now. But amazingly and mercifully, Jesus is offering us terms of peace. He only wants one small little thing. Everything. That's it. No big deal, right? You know, earlier I mentioned that Jesus is the Prince of Peace. He is. He is the Prince of Peace, and that's him. Exercising his gentleness and not destroying us for our wickedness. Like what Jarne said in her communion. For these sins that I've committed against God and against people, I deserve death. And she's right, she did. She's not a horrible person that's killed people or anything like that, but her sins deserve eternal separation from God. But God is offering us peace. He's offering us that peace right here and right now. God's coming to oppose us. That should scare you. That should scare you. God coming to oppose you. What does that look like? I was thinking about saving this for Halloween. Check it out. Revelation chapter 19. Be afraid. Be very afraid. What does God when Jesus comes back with his 20,000 to oppose us. Verse 11. I saw heaven standing open, and there before me was a white horse whose rider is called Faithful and True. With justice he judges and makes war. His eyes are like blazing fire. On his head are many crowns. He has a name written on him that no one knows but he himself. He is dressed in a robe dipped in blood, and his name is the Word of God. The armies of heaven were following him, riding on white horses and dressed in fine linen, white and clean. Out of his mouth comes a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. He will rule them with an iron scepter. He treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh he has his name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This is what Jesus looks like when he's coming back. Eyes with blazing fire. Many crowns on his head. It represents he has all authority. All authority on heaven and on earth God has given him. It says that his robe is dipped in blood from his enemies. His robe is dipped in blood. He comes back to judge and to make war. He's not coming back to bring peace at this time. Absolutely not. He treads the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God Almighty. For all the sin that we do to each other here on earth as humans, there is a reckoning coming, and this is what it's going to look like. He's going to throw everyone in the lake of burning fire and sulfur. Continue our reading in chapter 20, verse 11. Then I saw a great white throne and him who seated on it. Earth and sky fled from his presence, and there was no place for them. And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. Another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done, recorded in the books. The sea gave up the dead that were in it, and death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. And each person was judged according to what he had done. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. If anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. This is where the people go that oppose the cross, that oppose the teachings of Jesus, that oppose God, that do not accept his message of salvation and don't agree with his terms of peace, that don't want to give up everything they have. This is their final destruction. I don't know about you guys, but I will surrender. Just saying. As for me and my house, we'll follow the Lord.
Amen.
Peace with God. What does that look like? Back in Galatians 5:22, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. That's what peace with God looks like. That's what it looks like. If this does not describe your life, then you're not at peace with God. If you're not at peace with God, then He is opposing you right now. He's coming to oppose you. If you're feeling not at peace with God, it's because you haven't surrendered everything. It's because you just basically very simple. You have not surrendered everything to Him. And you need to, if you want to have peace. Some people don't want to have peace, and that's okay. It's up to them. To follow Jesus and call yourself a Christian, you have got to have peace with God. You have got to surrender everything. Reminds me of a World War II story, or actually pre-World War II story. The year was 1863, as a matter of fact. The Battle of Cameron. The French army, they were in Mexico. They were there to pressure the Mexican government to make good on some debts that they had. They had been suffering heavy losses to disease and to the Mexican army guerrillas who were attacking them. So there was a siege on the main capital of Pueblo, and there was some French reinforcements were coming to help reinforce them. And but they're going into enemy territory that was unknown, so they sent out a 65-man unit to go check out the pathway to get to Pueblo to make sure there was no Mexicans there. And they ran into a heavily armed cavalry unit of 3,000 Mexican soldiers. Ooh. And so these 65 men were trapped behind enemy lines all by themselves, away from the main army. And so they hold themselves up in this walled city. Not walled city, but a walled ranch. They had a wall and a two-story building in there. And so these French legionnaires held off 3,000 Mexican soldiers for about 12 hours of fighting. And see, when they're in there, they made a pledge, they made an oath, that we're not going to surrender. We're not going to give up until every single one of us is dead. We're just going to keep fighting until the last man. And that's what we're going to do. And they made an oath and they swore on it. Their leadership talked them into doing, the soldiers into doing that. Their oath would soon prove to be more prophetic than they had hoped. The Colonel Milan offered them terms of peace time and time again to try to get them to surrender. They responded by saying, we have a lot of ammunition and we're going to keep fighting. That's what he responded to. So by 11 a.m., the cavalry rushed the front, as well as the open space near the smaller ranch. And the attack was held off, but their captain, Danjo, was shot right in the very beginning, their leader. He was killed. And so the next Captain Villain, he took over the command, right? The lieutenant there. The legionnaires kept up their fight against the Mexicans, keeping them from getting close to the small two-story fortress, but they were fighting the extreme heat in the noon of the Mexicans' desert there. And then the Mexicans get reinforced with 1,200 more troops. So it even gets more nuts, right? Despite these terrible conditions, the legionnaires continue to fight as casualties mounted on both sides. By 2 o'clock, there were only 20 guys left that were able to fight. To make matters worse, one of the buildings in the courtyard was set on fire. Things keep getting worse for these people. They keep suffering losses, and they refuse to surrender. By 2:30, the lieutenant got killed. And then there's another lieutenant that took over. His name was Maudet. He took command, and they continued fighting. By 4:30, there were only 12 men left standing. Only 12 guys from 65. Another chance at surrender is offered, and again they refused. The legionnaires taking their oath very seriously. The Mexicans charged another time, this time capturing 5 of their 12 members, leaving only Lieutenant Maudet and a few men in the stables at the rear of the compound. By 5 o'clock, the 5 remaining legionnaires were out of ammunition. They had nothing left except the clothes on their back and their empty rifles. They had fought for nearly 12 hours and hadn't eaten since the day before and had no water. Their entire company had been wiped out before them. But still, their oath rang in their ears. Even over all that gunfire and all the loss and blood and guts they got suffered, they still stubbornly refused to surrender. They fixed their bayonets on their rifles and charged out into the Mexicans. 2 guys were killed right on the spot. And then there's just a couple of guys left standing there with empty guns in their hands, surrounded by 3,000 Mexicans, or how much ever was left that they didn't kill. They finally agreed to surrender to the Mexicans, but on their own terms. They demanded that they had permission to keep their weapons and keep their uniforms. And the Mexicans must provide for their wounded who were still alive. Amazed by their tenacity and wanting to have the whole ordeal over with, the Mexicans accepted their terms. They brought these 2 bedraggled, battle-weary, and dehydrated legionnaires before their commander. Colonel Milan famously declared, "These are not men, they're demons." That was his famous line when he said about these guys. You know, sometimes we can be like that. We can be wanting to come to God and surrender on our own terms. And no matter how bad things are going in our life, no matter how much God keeps taking away from us, we stubbornly want to hold on to our pride, want to hold on to our worldly possessions. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And we're going to keep that baggage. And we even want to bring that baggage with us into the church, into God's family. We can fight tooth and nail till God takes everything from us, except the very clothes on our back, we still suddenly want to hold on to even that. When God said, you have to give up everything, He meant you have to give up everything. Even the clothes on your back. And that's what I love about the women in this church. They don't dress provocatively. They cover themselves up, because even their clothes belongs to God and their bodies as well.
Amen.
People are willing to bring their baggage in with them, even if it costs others their lives. Like the French officers willing to let the men under their care die at the hands of a stronger army for no good reason whatsoever. What kind of baggage, you might ask, that people can bring into church with them, into God's family? Attitude baggage. Having an attitude. A while back, I was having some counseling session with some members of our church that are no longer members of our church, and they're like, "You used me. You used me to do all these things. You used me. You took my money and you used me. You used my time. You used my awesome talent. I'm so smart. You used me to get ahead." And I'm like, you're right. I did use you. I took advantage of you. And I'm not sorry for it. Didn't you say this prayer yourself? God, please use me in a powerful way. Well, you're welcome then. I'm in this church, I'm going to use you. I'm going to use your money. I'm going to use your time. And I don't want you to have an attitude about it. Because that's how God uses people. I don't use your money so I can buy me nice clothes or a nice car. You see my F-150s all beat up outside. I worked for that truck with my own job anyway.
Amen.
But I'm using people to serve God. That's what I use people for. I use your time to go out and share your faith. I use your money to send missionaries out to plant churches in other countries that don't have any money. That's what I'm going to use you for. And if you have an attitude about it, take it someplace else. Emotional baggage. We can bring our emotional baggage into the church too, can't we? God made us emotional beings. God is an emotional being as well. We have emotions and they're good things and they should be used to guide us somewhat. But not guide us into sin. Not guide us into having emotional issues with each other. We're not controlled by our emotion. We're controlled by the Spirit of God through the Scriptures. That's what controls us. We never bring our worldliness into the church. Our greed, our pride, our bitterness, our contemptuousness, our selfishness. That has no place here. Arrogance, impurity, and lust. That has no place. That kind of baggage, you leave that outside of God's kingdom. That's the kind of garbage that gets people killed. Guns don't kill people. People with sin kill people. You want to be a part of this church? You want to be a part of God's church? Get rid of the worldly demons. Get rid of the worldly demons. My challenge for you today is make peace with God before you get us all killed. Surrender everything, please. We need to have the conviction of those French soldiers, but for the right army. They're in the wrong army, they're in the weaker army, that's why they lost. Why would you want to fight in the weaker army? God's army is stronger and a larger force. Satan seems powerful, and he seems larger because he has more of our family members on his side. There's no doubt about it. There's just a few of us in here and everybody else is not. He seems stronger, but nevertheless, God's army is the stronger and larger army.
Come on.
This is the winning team, ladies and gentlemen, right here. This is the winning army. I have the playbook right here. Victory is ours. Right here. Read through the Bible, the very end, it shows the victory. Point number 3, to the victor go the spoils. To the victor goes the prize. Go to John chapter 14. Jesus talks about it.
Come on. Come on, bro.
Come on.
John chapter 14. In verse 1. This is Jesus talking about the victory we're going to have. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I am going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going. You know, Jesus here is comforting his disciples. He's been talking so much about his impending death on the cross at the hands of wicked men, and they were troubled. They were worried. They had fear of an unknown future. And we can be the same way today as well. Be troubled and worried and have fear of an unknown future. But Jesus says, don't worry. Trust God. Trust me. If you're troubled right now, it's because you're not trusting God. If you're troubled in your life, it's because you have fear and you're not believing the promises in the Bible. You're focusing on something else. Right now, at this very moment, Jesus is in heaven preparing a place for us. And he's coming back right now. He's on his way to take us there. We are the victors in this war, and heaven is the prize. The prize is not here on earth. The prize is in heaven. It's above. It's up there. Whenever we are troubling and struggling to make peace with God while we are at war in this world, it's because we have lost sight of heaven. The Bible says to keep your heart and your mind on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God, to keep your hearts and mind in heaven. We get so focused sometimes on the war that we're in, the spiritual war that we're in, that we fail to see the victory, and that's why we have trouble. And that's a very big mistake. Sometimes even in the fog of war, in the heat of war, we can have friendly fire. We can take each other out. There's a story of a man named Patrick Tillman. He was an NFL football star, and after 9/11, he decided to join the Army Rangers and go to fight for his country against the Taliban. And he was out there, and he was put on patrol in some Humvees, and another patrol of Humvees came under what he thought was enemy fire, and he heard on the radio what was going on. So he came up to their position, got out of his Humvee with some of his soldiers, and they went around to see if they could help these guys out. And they mistook him for the enemy, and they shot him in the head 3 times with a machine gun and killed him. One of the most horrifying cases of friendly fire in the war. It was a terrible tragedy. This young man lost his life too young. He lost his life too young due to friendly fire. The same thing can happen for us. We're so focused on the war, we can kill each other. We can fight against each other. We can be so focused we lose sight of the victory. We start taking each other out. We can start to attack each other. And you know who was fired up when Patrick Tillman got killed? Not his soldiers. They were hurt. They killed one of their own. It was terrible. The Taliban weren't bombed. They were fired up. They didn't even have to show up. Come to find out, the Taliban weren't even there. They were shooting at nothing. And accidentally killed one of their own. What a terrible tragedy. When we take each other out, Satan gets fired on up. If we're fighting amongst ourselves, that's never okay. It's never okay. We have to be unified and loving. It's not us against each other. It's not us against the world. It's us against Satan. You know, a guy nicknamed Doubting Thomas, he had trouble seeing the victory that was right in front of him. Continue reading, Jesus just tells him, hey, don't worry, don't be troubled, trust in me, I'm going to take you to heaven, I'm going to come get you, I'm going to take you by your hand, I'm going to walk you up the road, the narrow road, I'm going to take you into heaven. And Thomas is off. But, verse 5, Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going, so how can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, you would have known my Father as well. From now on, you know him and have seen him. My favorite quote from Jesus, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the only way, the only life, the only truth, not one among many. He is the only way.
Yeah.
If you really know Jesus, you would really know God. And you would really see the victory that he has in store for us in heaven. Yeah. You can touch it, taste it, and feel it. I know I can. But I'm not perfect, and sometimes I get troubled, sometimes I doubt. I'm a human. But we have to keep our eyes focused on Jesus. I want you guys to take a moment and visualize it. Just think about it. Yes, it's a narrow way. Yes, it's a small gate. Yes, only a few are going to find it. This is true, but don't think of it that way. Jesus is showing us. He's taking us by the hand. He's guiding us. Imagine that, walking through those pearly gates of streets paved with gold, that room in heaven prepared just for you. The beds are made. The fridge is stocked. Oh, it's awesome. And tons and tons of Cheez-Its and sunflower seeds for us. Fire all up. Loads of it. That's just that nasty stuff. But God has it prepared for us right now as we speak. Focus on that. Stop thinking about the negative things in life. Jesus has chosen you. Jesus has set the example. Jesus brought you into his wonderful light. If you're living your life as a baptized disciple of Jesus Christ, living a repentant life. The path is not hidden. Jesus is on his way right now to take you to the place he has prepared. There is no other better way. Let's go. My challenge for you is to get rid of any sin baggage that you have. Stop focusing on the things of this world that you have no control over anyhow. Focus on Jesus in heaven. Focus on the victory. In closing, there is a time for peace and there is a time for war. We will certainly have both here on this earth. There is no doubt of it. To follow God means you will be at odds with everyone on this planet, including your family members and everybody else. The battle lines are drawn in the sand, right through the middle of our families. They're drawn. It doesn't matter though, because at the end, having peace with God means that you are on the winning side. And you get the victory in heaven. Amen. Jesus is the only way, and his teachings are right here. The path is not in front of you. All you have to do is give up everything for Jesus. That's all you have to do. It's very simple. My hope and my prayer is that each and every one of us can go out and share the true message of peace with as many people as possible. I love you guys. Thank you all. Amen.
Amen. We're going to sing one.